Hey guys, Tyler here today for the channel. Today we're going to be doing a video on my 2002 Camaro Z28. This video is going to go over the window motor and how to replace it. I'm having an issue with rolling the window back up. This is a very common issue with this generation of Camaro. So we're going to go ahead and replace that window motor, throw a new one in, and we'll show you the results. To start off, I'll show you the replacement motor that we're going to be putting in there. This is an actual AC Delco part. It doesn't want to focus for some reason. There it goes. This is an actual AC Delco part. I would recommend getting the AC Delco part. The number is on it here in the video. This is the actual motor itself. I would highly recommend doing the AC Delco one just because I've used cheaper ones in the past from different companies and they just seem to not last as long. AC Delco is what was in the car originally, and if you think about it, if this car is a 2002, it's lasted 18 years with that motor in it. So we're going to go ahead and start pulling the trim panels apart, and I'll show you how. Alright guys, so we are over at the inside door panel now. This is going to be our first step, is taking this entire door panel off. I'm going to go step by step and try and show you guys every step, make this very detailed. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take out these two large screws that are inside the grab handle. Like I said, it's going to be two Phillips head screws, so that is your first step. Alright, so we got our two big screws out, and then there's also going to be another small Phillips head screw here, and also one over here by the mirror, so we're going to take those two out next. Okay, so now that I have my two smaller screws that I took out and this whole panel piece will come off, I recommend using a magnetic tray like I'm doing to keep all of your screws in there so they don't walk away on you. And then I also kept the other panel with the screw separate. So the last screw that we're going to have to undo on the outside of the panel, there's actually one hidden underneath. It's pretty big. It's right here, so that's going to be our last one. I'm sure the camera's going to have a hard time picking that up, but it's going to be another really big screw, kind of like the two that were in here. So we're going to take those out next. So now that we have all of our screws that hold in the panel out, our next step is going to be to remove this window switch here. This, you can see the outline of it is all one piece. A lot of people use a flathead screwdriver to pull these out. You have to kind of be careful when you do it. I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver as well, but I'm going to wrap the flathead screwdriver in a towel to make sure that I'm not scratching up all the plastic on my door panel. These are getting kind of hard to find as these cars get older and older, so I'm going to be kind of careful. I'll switch to a GoPro and show you guys how. Alright, so we have switched to the GoPro, and like I said, I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver and a cloth. I'm just going to lay the cloth over the flathead screwdriver, and I'm going to very gently pry on the edges of this switch setup. And the whole idea, which I probably just broke that clip, is to do it gently. Nope, it just fell out, so I'm just gonna have to grab it. Basically, there's these clips that sit in there, and through pressure, once you pop them in, these hold them in, and I'm guessing I just pushed that one out, but you want to try and go gently, and these should pop out, and then you're going to just disconnect the electrical connectors on the back. You're just gonna pull straight back and away. You can wiggle a little bit. These kind of are a pain in the butt. I mean, it's been in the car for a very long time, so they're going to be kind of stuck on there. But the key is to just keep pulling slowly and gently, and you're just going to wiggle it back out. So once I get these off, I'll show you the setup on them. Alright, so now that I have the electrical connections pulled off, you can kind of see that it's just a male and female end, like any typical connection. So you're basically just going to pull back on it and wiggle at the same time, and eventually these should slide off. Like I said, they've been in the car for a long time, so they're going to kind of be stuck. And I also reattached my clip that popped off. If you hear like a metal ping when you pull this switch panel off, it's probably that this fell off or broke. You can buy these online if yours did break. Like I said, you want to just be careful prying when you pull it off. So now that we have our switch out, we're going to set that aside, and we're going to go ahead and take the rest of the door panel off. So I forgot to mention earlier, when I talked about taking the giant screw out of here, there is also another small screw right above it. You can see this is a really big long one, and then this is a smaller one that screws into here, so you're going to need to take that out as well. And then our next step is going to be pulling the slider for the unlock and lock for your lock system. So we're going to go ahead and take that out. So our next step is going to be to remove the locking mechanism for your door. This is what you're going to use to lock and unlock the door on your car. This is pretty easy to take off. You're just going to pull out on it. You can use 2 fingers and just pull out. Sometimes the this trim piece is going to want to come with it. Of course, it's going to prove me wrong and be a pain in the butt. So we'll just slide this out a little bit. And eventually, it will come off. You just have to persuade it to. So I did get this off. I couldn't do it on camera because it was kind of being a pain in the butt. But basically it's going to sit in there like that. This little hole slides onto the post, and you basically just have to keep wiggling it back and forth until it pops. It's probably going to take you a couple tries, and it's going to be frustrating. Don't give up. Just keep pulling on it and try and be gentle, because these are all old plastic GM parts, so they will break. So I'm going to put that to the side, and then our next step is going to be to take this whole trim panel off. So I'm just going to pull back on the handle, and then you should be able to twist and slide that off. And again, all this stuff is old, so you have to just try and be patient and be careful with it. A lot of the stuff is kind of a pain. And then there is one last electrical connection that's actually easier to get to once you take this whole trim panel off. And this is going to be your little tiny light that's going to light up your switches at night. And this is just another typical GM connector that you're just going to pull out very carefully. The light bulb will stay with it, and then you can take this trim panel and put it to the side with the rest of your screws. And now we're going to get to actually taking this entire door panel off. Alright, so our next job is going to be to actually pull the entire door panel up and off, which again is kind of a pain, but that's just how these things are. You're basically just going to grab on the handle and just yank straight up. And I know it's going to sound a little violent at first, but these do just kind of sit in there. And you have to pull up on them a couple times. Sometimes you can kind of pop the bottoms out and pull up on them. It does help to have somebody kind of push out on the window a little bit, take some of the pressure off. But you're basically just going to want to work your way around. And these sit almost in like sliders. You can see how it's popping out now. There we go. And you're just going to keep pulling up on it. And I know this kind of looks a little aggressive, but you kind of have to be aggressive with these. And eventually, they will pop out all the way around. So let me get this last little bit off, and I'll show you guys. But you basically just want to pull straight up on them. Like I said, it works best to start with this kind of grip here and pull straight up on it. And eventually all these will pop out. So as soon as I'm done taking this off, I'll show you. Alright guys, so we got the door panel off. The one spot that I was having a little bit of trouble with was right in here. A little tip that I'll give you guys that I just learned. When you get to this spot here on the edge of the panel, you're gonna have to pull out towards you a little bit and then lift up, because there's a little lip right here that the outside panel is gonna get caught on. But good thing is we have our entire door panel off, and now we can work on disconnecting the speaker over there and then pulling off all of our liners so we can actually get to the window motor itself so we can replace it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the GoPro, and I will show you up close how we're going to take the speaker off and how we're going to pull off the plastic liner so we can get to our window motor. Alright guys, so now that I have taken the speaker out and the housing is just there, I'm going to peel back all of this plastic sealer that is going to give us more access so we can take our motor out and drill whatever holes we have to drill. Just be careful, this stuff is super sticky and disgusting. So you just want to peel this back carefully, try and take all the tacky goop with it and leave it on the plastic. That way you don't have to deal with it on the door. So you're just gonna pull all this back carefully, and then you wanna lay it on the ground on not this side, but this side. That way the sticky stuff doesn't stick to the floor. So I'm just gonna pull all this off, and I'll show you guys. All right, so I would imagine that my speaker is gonna be a little bit different from what you guys have in your car, because I have an aftermarket one. But this is pretty self-explanatory. I'm just gonna go around and unbolt all the bolts that are holding the speaker housing into the door, and then take the speaker out so we can get a little bit more room to work with the window and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these off, and then I'll show you guys. All right, so since we are on the passenger side of the car, we're doing the passenger side window, the window motor is gonna sit up on an angle like this. So you can imagine behind the door, it's gonna look like this, and the electrical connection is gonna be up at the top. So basically what we need to do now is drill holes through the door so we can get to the rivets that GM put through these holes here, and drill them out, and then we're gonna use a nut and a bolt instead. That way if we ever have to replace the window motor again, it's gonna be much easier. We won't have to drill holes in the door. We can just unbolt everything. So I'm gonna reach my arm behind and basically kind of take an educated guess on where the rivets are, and then we're gonna drill small pilot holes to make sure we're going in the right area, and then we're gonna drill the rivets out so we can detach the window motor and put our new one in. And also what you wanna do is make sure that you're securing the window, because once you take the window motor out, and it disconnects from this shaft here, there'll be nothing holding the window up. The only thing that's holding the window up right now is the motor. So I took a couple GoPro suction cups and just lined them along the door frame with the window, and then a couple clamps as well to make sure that the window stays up once we take the window motor out. So we're gonna go ahead and drill a couple of those holes, and I'll kind of give you guys an idea of where you should be drilling yours as well. All right, so now that we have our speaker out, what we're doing is we're marking where we think that there's rivets. So what we're gonna do is just drill a little bit of a bigger hole so you can see the rivet, and then we're gonna take a smaller drill bit and actually drill that rivet out. And the way that we're finding the rivets on these is I'm sticking my hand behind and feeling along the window motor, and there's actually a steel bracket that the rivets are gonna be riveted through. So I'm gonna drill a hole here, and we're gonna then be able to see our rivet and drill it out. All right, so we have our 3 holes drilled for the passenger side. So if you're doing the passenger side on your Camaro or Trans Am, this is just about where the holes need to be drilled. So you're gonna have one that is closer to this bigger hole here and the speaker. The other one is gonna be right on top of this hole here. And then the third one is gonna be up a little bit higher underneath this bolt, almost straight down a little bit to the right, so you can see where we have them marked out. So if you want to just use these holes for reference, and then right behind them is going to be your rivets that you have to drill out. So we're going to drill out the last rivet, and then we're going to show you disconnecting the electrical connection as well. So now that we have drilled our pilot hole, the first time I drilled a little bit too far to the left, so I had to drill another one. But and I know this is probably going to be hard to see on the camera, but right behind the hole on the right-hand side, there is a rivet there that is exposed now. So we're gonna take our smaller drill bit and drill through that rivet to help release the window motor, and then we're gonna go around and do the rest. All right, so now that we have drilled all 3 rivets out, here, here, and here, I should be able to stick my arm behind here and pull on the motor. And there it goes, it popped out nicely. And like I said, make sure before you do this step that you have your suction cups and clamps holding the window up in its upright position. And another reason you want to do this with the window up is because when you're drilling, if the window is down, you run the risk of running a drill bit all the way through and cracking your window. So it's better to have it in the upright position. So now we're just going to go ahead and pull on this electrical connector, and it should pop right out. There we go. So this is the old motor. Where is our new motor? Here it is. So you can see how these motors are just about identical. They should be the exact same part. The only difference is this one is 18 years old and this one is brand new. So we're gonna go ahead and pop the new window motor back into the electrical connection, and then just check to make sure that the new motor is functioning properly. All right, so I have the new motor hooked up and we're just gonna test to make sure it works, which you can see it going back and forth. So we know that the new motor works properly and that we can install it back into position and bolt it back in. Okay, so what we've done now is basically lined up the two motors next to each other, and we're looking at the holes that we drilled through where the rivets were, because we're gonna use bolts this time instead of rivets. So we're just gonna match up the holes that we drilled with the new holes. And we actually drilled the new holes out a little bit so we could use a little bit of a thicker bolt. And we're gonna use a locking nut on the back to make sure that the nut doesn't unscrew itself from the vibration of the window going up and down, and from the car vibrating as it's driving. And the way that we figured out which holes we drilled through is this one. Obviously is I drilled a little bit wide on that one, but also you can look on the back and you can see where the back of the rivet kind of marked up the back of the hole. So that's how you can find which holes you need to put bolts through on your new one. And then you're basically just gonna slide this motor in the same spot that the old one was in and bolt it back in. So we're gonna go ahead and mock this up and we'll show you how we did it. All right, so for an update for you guys, we bolted the motor back in. So like I said, you're gonna, when you do this, you're gonna have to drill even bigger holes, I realized, because you're gonna need something to get the socket through. What we decided to do was run the bolt from the back forward and then leave the nut on this side. That way, even if you have a little bit of a longer bolt like we had to use for this one here, the bolt is gonna come forward and you're not gonna risk hitting your window possibly. So like I said, you're just gonna line up those holes that you had before, place the window motor in, run a bolt through, and then put a nut on. I highly recommend a locking nut. That way it can't back itself back off. And just so you guys know, this is the old school regulator that's still in it. So the window does work, as you can see. It just is a little bit slow and kind of bounces around a lot, but the window does work. Our new window motor is in. So now we're gonna go in reverse order and I'm gonna show you how to reassemble everything nice and clean, and then we'll take the car out for a drive. All right, so as far as the reassembly goes, it's gonna be pretty simple. First thing you're gonna wanna do is bolt your speaker back in and then lay your plastic back across the door panel. Just make sure that you pull your wires through one of the holes here. You don't want your wires to be behind the plastic and then start bolting stuff up and having to take this back off again. So we have our plastic in, our speaker in. Now we're gonna work on putting the door panel back on. This is gonna be one of the more challenging portions of the putting it back together, just because there's a couple slots that have to line up. So we're gonna go ahead and put the door back on, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so with the door panel, what you're gonna wanna do is lay it over the top piece up here, line up the whole top. There's another piece, so you'll see that where the door panel itself will have to come over and clip down onto. And then once you have this top piece lined up with the top of the inside of the door, there's gonna be a couple little clips here, 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 and here that you're gonna slide the door down in, and it's gonna lock into place. And after you're able to do that, it's pretty simple. You're just gonna reinstall your two gigantic Phillips head screws here. There's gonna be another really long, large Phillips screw here, and then we're gonna go ahead and work on putting all of our trim piece back together and our switch. For reinstalling the trim panel, you're gonna wanna slide your door release through the pocket here, and then tilt the panel down. And what I actually did was take this big screw back out because it made it a little bit easier for this to be flexible. And then you can slide the whole thing down on top of this. Now I'm gonna reinstall the big screw and clip in all the clips around the trim panel, and then reinstall the switch. So something I forgot to mention, before you guys put all this back together, you'll realize that the little bulb that needs to go back in behind the door panel, you can either do it before you put the door panel on, or you could do it after, like I just did. It's not that difficult. You just take the bulb, and if you feel around with your fingers, you can get it to go back in the socket, but it definitely is a little bit easier to do it before you put this door panel back on. I forgot to mention earlier. So that's another thing. Just don't forget to put that bulb back in. So now that we have everything all bolted back up, we have our locking thing set in place. We have our switches plugged back in.
If you're doing the passenger side, the clear type connector is going to be on the top and the black one is going to be on the bottom. You're just going to line up your pins and slide them back into place. And as far as that's pretty much it. You're just going to pop this connector, switch plate back into place, and that'll pretty much be the end of it. Before you pop these back in, make sure that your window does still work, and you may want to check the locking mechanism as well to make sure it didn't get tangled on the way while you were installing everything. So we're going to go ahead and do that, but that's going to be the end of this video, guys. Really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Thank you very much and have a great day.